information provided in this show is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Viewers should use their own discretion and consult with a healthcare professional for personalized guidance and recommendations. Good. Hello, and welcome to the Health Revolution. Join the movement. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, and I am absolutely thrilled at the conversations that we are having going forward and walking together in one accord. It is all about engaging conversation, elevating health and wellness, and empowering transformation. And we're going to get right into it with my next guest. She is an incredible human being in so many different ways. She is an incredible spiritual health expert. As a child, Wendy Watson was a product of a divided and chaotic home. She didn't realize how chaotic it was until she started her own personal growth journey. It spanned 2 decades. She has built 2 businesses. She's saved marriages. She's changed suicidal tendencies, helped clients through trauma, and so much more. She uses a 5-step program to help people find their true paths. We're going to get into that. And in terms of internal peace and happiness and healthy relationships, that is her jam in terms of how she leads people. She has a book coming out this month, and actually it's come out. It's called Verbal Turbulence, and she's currently working on developing workshops in the near future. So I'd like to welcome Wendy Watson. Wendy, how are you this morning?
I am great. How are you guys? Thank you so much for having me on the show this morning.
So glad to have you. So start by saying a little bit more about your title. So spiritual health expert, all of that. What does that mean to you?
So for me, that's mindset, emotions. It's really delving into your personal relationships, your inner relationships, your inner relationship with yourself, with God, spirit, divine, universe, whatever vocabulary you want to use for that, and creating those dialogues and really developing that relationship and listening to your intuition, but not just listening to it, you got to follow through, right? So it's just a lot of coaching along those lines.
That's fantastic. So the following through, I know that you had highlighted, and just learning a little bit more about you, having the type of upbringing that you had. What were some of the things that really spoke to you in terms of takeaway lessons that led you to the path you're on now?
You know, there's a lot of lessons that I learned, most of which was really kind of opening up and listening to people, and not just speaking to speak, or speaking because it's my turn, or, waiting to have something to say. It's actually listening to the person and then developing my response to that person, and not just contributing to the conversation.
So your biggest takeaway that you had as you're working through and cultivating this journey that you're on, that led you on becoming a spiritual health expert, what was your biggest takeaway that you've had?
Gratitude for life, whatever life throws at you, right? So I mean, I've lost a child. I've gone through my own 2 divorces. My parents have been divorced twice and married 3 times. And, I've been surrounded by addiction, drugs, alcohol, all the things. But without those things, I don't have the empathy and the tools that I need to be able to help other people go through it. And this is for me, this is what life is all about. Experiencing as much as life has to offer, even if it's painful, but also when it's like really great, right? But that also gives you twice the amount of gratitude when things are going well, because you know how tough some circumstances can be.
Agree. Now, the going through one of the things that we highlighted on the show is just working through that divorce trauma. And I want to just jump right into that and tell me a little bit more about what it means to work through that divorce trauma. Where do you start when you work with someone, and just how do you set the tone for that foundation to learn and grow from?
Right. So the first thing to know is whether or not they were the decision maker or the receiver, because there's a different mindset. The decision maker has already worked through some of the reasons on why they made that decision. And now once that you make that decision, then you can start moving forward. But when you're the receiver, you're at the beginning of where you need to start working before you can move forward. So depends on what stage you're in. It also depends on what emotions that you're dealing with, what agreements that you've made with yourself that got you in the situation that you're in, right? So there's a lot of, it's really like an onion. You really got to like slowly peel back the layers. And so I tailor it to the person that I'm dealing with, right? So there's certain pieces of information that I need, and whether you're the decision maker or the receiver is step number one. Figuring out which emotions that you're dealing with is step number two. And then we can go a little bit deeper into the conversation.
So what led you to really dive into divorce trauma as an area of study, as an area of getting granular and working with the clients that you do work with, and then just sharing your message?
Well, I've been through so much of it. I've been through so much of it. I might as well be an expert, right? So, and then, a friend of mine from high school reminded me the other day on Facebook, back in, I'm going to say 1999 or 98, before I even had my first marriage, I was helping her start her divorce process. I helped her write a letter to her husband saying that so apparently like it's been ingrained in me somewhere that I'm just meant to help people. And it's just kind of always been a thing.
I remember my first marriage, it just, as it ended in divorce, it was a really painful process. And it was something that I had, there was a level of uncertainty that came with that journey. What are some things that you hear people say when you work with them, just that they're having an issue going through in terms of grappling with the emotions? What are some things that come up that you notice pattern wise or just society wise?
One of the main emotions is anger, right? Whether it's their anger or it's the other person's anger. And some people just don't deal with anger very well, or they don't deal with emotions very well. So they have a tendency to lash out, which makes the whole process that much more complicated and that much more dramatic. Right. So I was speaking to a family law attorney a couple weeks ago, and she has one client right now that is just, she's so overwhelmed with emotions that she's spending more time on the phone with her lawyer at $400 an hour, whatever it is. I don't even know what it is, but I think it's on average $300 an hour, right? So she's costing herself more money because she's so overwhelmed with emotions. And the lawyer's like, if she could get her emotions under control, even a little bit, she would make better decision making and then have a better resolution at the end. So I think it's, just emotion management. I think a lot of people struggle with coping with emotions and managing them.
Now, why do you think that is? Why do you think it's such a trend? We know the divorce rate is not something, it's not a low rate. It's up
No.
there. And so what they say, one in two marriages these days end in divorce. Why do you think that is, that the emotions are such a challenge to deal with?
One, I don't think that we've been taught, and I say we as society, I don't think we've been taught really how to manage our emotions very well, or really what they look like. I had a 20-year-old in my office that could not label emotions. She needed an app to identify what emotions were. And number two, I think that we're brought up with this romancing the stone perspective of what love and life should look like, and then he should run up the tower and defeat the dragon or whatever it is in order to save the woman, and then it's happily ever after. And that's not life. And so I don't think that we're taught how to deal with complicated situations and the emotions around that and being able to manage them. I just don't think we're taught very well. And then you add in all the romance and, the novels and Disney and the princess and, all the all the glamour and everything. And it's just, to me, it's not realistic.
I think you are spot on about something, that there is a trend in society where the dealing with emotions, and you're seeing it, we are all seeing it, how it's played out, that if we don't manage it well, we don't, and of course that's a whole other bigger picture, but how in general society, if we don't manage it well, it manifests elsewhere.
Yeah.
And then it becomes an even bigger issue. So I think you're touching on something that's pretty profound in relationships. And then this is the space in a marriage where it's supposed to be the most intimate relationship that we have, if we're in one. And yet the coming to the end of a marriage is something that's just, it's a very trying and often painful time for anyone going through that.
Right. Because when you go to that, generally speaking, right, when you stand at the altar and you say, I do until death do you part, I feel in those moments, most people really do have that intentions. And that's a tight bond that you're creating with someone. So in order to undo that bond, to cut that bond, or, break it, or whatever term you want to use, that, man, that hurts.
I agree.
You thought that was your person, right? And even if you're the one that's making the decision, it's really hard to make that decision to break that bond that you just created, even whether it's 6 months or 20 years or anywhere in between. And especially if it's your second or your third time going through it, it's just, man, it's just not a good time.
So do you think that there's more of a romanticism behind getting married for a lot of people? Do you notice that maybe people get married just for the sake of being married, to say that the princess being saved, or just the happily ever after story of wanting the fairy tale, how it all looks? Do you think that there's a level of romanticism that's part of why people have gotten married, that they grapple with it when, say, if that marriage comes to an end?
I think there's an infinite number of reasons why people get married. I think that's one of them, especially with girls, right? With women. We are grown up that he's our, knight on a white horse, and, all the things. And once you get married, it's just happily ever after, and it's perfect. And so I think there's that. I think there's some women that are just so in love, some people, not just women, but that are just so in love with being in love, or so in love with getting married, that they're more focused on that than they are the person that they're marrying. Or there's, like me, my first marriage, right? So my dad wasn't really around at the time. My grandfather, who was my male role model, had passed, and all of my uncles were off doing their own thing. And I woke up one day and I was just like, I'm going to find my husband today. I was so ready for just a man to love me that I didn't really look at the person that I was falling in love with and how he was treating me.
I hear you. I can relate to that. I think with my first marriage, I just wanted the happily ever after, and I found myself making do with whatever the situation was with my ex-husband, who was becoming my husband at the time, that I found that I had overlooked certain attributes to the relationship and how compatible we were for different areas of our relationship, that it just, the idea of getting married was far superseded just the reality behind having a relationship work.
Right.
And so when you're working with couples, do you ever, in terms of, I know that you said that you've built 2 businesses, you've saved marriages.
Yes.
At what point how do you discern whether a marriage is worth saving or whether it's just not salvageable?
And that's the beauty of my job. That's not my decision to make. That is the 2 people that are in the relationship, that is their decision to make. I just coach them. I coach the individual, right? So both individuals, the way I look at it is that both individuals are the ones that made the agreement. So as individuals, they either need to maintain the agreement that they made, the contract that they made, even if it's not a marriage on paper, right? It doesn't matter what kind of relationship it is. 2 people made an agreement with each other to be exclusive. It's up to those 2 people to decide whether or not they want to maintain that contract. So I just work with the people and I coach them on what's in their best interest. And I coach them to make their own decisions and to reevaluate their own agreements, their own beliefs, and what they choose to keep and what they choose to change. And it's all their own decisions. So it's not up to me to decide. It's up to the people that are in the relationship to make that decision.
And so they use your guidance to determine that. And so I can imagine how at times that could be, it's almost like story developing, where learning more about the couple and then just carefully getting to that, or guiding them to get to that decision to determine if the marriage is worth saving or if they need to decide otherwise.
Right. And I just want to make everybody the best version of themselves that they are meant to be, the purest, truest forms of themselves. And in that form, if you decide that is the best person for you and the other person agrees, then fabulous, right? That's ideal, right? So I just want you to be you. I just want you to be great. And I want you to find the best person that's supposed to be that you're supposed to, that works for you.
And speaking of great, I love that. So we're going to take a quick break after this commercial and we'll be right back.
Coming this spring, by popular demand, the second season show on the Tour of Love.
And the E360 TV platform is saying we want the Tour of Love.
With winner of the first Global Impactor Award, Tamara Hunter, along with Emmy-winning co-host Skip Thomas.
We are going on tour, on the road. It's time. Love unites, and there is healing through connections. This is a worldwide movement, the Tour of Love.
We're back here on the Health Revolution talking to spiritual health expert Wendy Watson, and we've been talking about highlighting different areas of her craft and touching on divorce and trauma through divorce and what it takes to decide and determine whether a marriage is worth saving or a marriage is reached the end of its course. So Wendy, I wanted to delve into your 5-step program if we could. And I wanted to take it step by step. I know the first one you talk about is self-ownership. Tell us a little bit about self-ownership, what that means and how that's the catalyst for your program.
Right. So self-ownership is really owning who you are. Owning all the nuances, whether you're somebody that has to be on time or that is constantly late, and just owning it, right? And projecting what you own. Understand what you believe, understand what your agreements are, going through all of those things, and just taking ownership of yourself. And then projecting that and being like, look, this is who I am. You love me, or or you don't have to. It's okay. Because I love myself.
So how much of a challenge do you find that it can be for some in terms of establishing that self-ownership and creating that foundation?
That is a big deal, right? So you almost have to go through the other 4 steps in order to get to self-ownership. Most people do not like to hold themselves accountable. Like, that is rough, right? And be like, oh, I did just say that. That wasn't the right thing to say, right? And then not just acknowledging it and being, and accepting that you said something that probably could have been said better. But 2, asking yourself for forgiveness and then going back to the person that you said it to and asking for atonement or forgiveness. Right. And being like, I'm sorry, I could have said that better. This is not how I meant it. Right. And owning all of that. And then going through the process of, okay, now how could I have said that better? And like come up with like 3 or 4 different options that your subconscious can hold into place so that the next time that comes up, these options will come forward. And then you can, right. So just the idea of being like, I shouldn't have said that.
So I think
it's hard for people.
Yeah. So I wonder, the self-ownership is a big deal. And I 100% agree with you. I've often wondered if it's that level of vulnerability that seems scary to expose, where it's hard for someone to take ownership or that they perceive it to be hard to step into that vulnerable space.
Absolutely. Because I think there's a big stigma out there that vulnerability is weakness. Right. But when we're if we can learn to view vulnerability as a strength, man, we can move mountains. Right. Like me sharing all of my stories about my divorces and losing a child and addiction and all these things, not only in my book, but on TV, in order to show people that they are not alone, in order to show people I have gone through this, I have walked the walk, I have stepped through it, I've gotten through it, is really a strength. And if we can show people that and establish that in other people, I just think this world would be amazing if we can do that.
Yeah, that's very profound. And you're right in that to be that candid is to show a level of strength where you're still you're still stepping into that level of truth, and you're being honest, and there's no smoke and mirrors, no poker face, nothing that would shield that. It's that level of exposure. I think
Right.
I think you're spot on. Yes.
Right. So if we can find that strength and vulnerability, then we can take ownership in we can attain self-ownership.
So that's the first step. The second one you've brought up before, self-leadership. Say more about that.
Right. So how do you want to lead yourself? Right? Like, what decisions do you want to make? How do you want to project yourself to people? Right? So it's one thing to have a manager at work that kind of leads you in the right direction, but you really have to, how do I want to say this? You really kind of have to lead yourself a lot, right? Because nobody else is going to pay your bills for you. Nobody else is going to make money for you, right? All of these things. So you kind of have to lead yourself in some direction, be like, okay, what direction do I want to go in? Do I really want the cookies on the shelf, right? They look delicious. They look tempting. But if your inner self and your intuition says no, then your self-leadership has to follow through with that no. Because if you grab and buy the cookies and eat the cookies anyways, you're creating an inner conflict with your inner relationships and your actions. And is that the kind of leadership that you want to have with yourself?
So what do you tell the woman or the person where to start with self-leadership if they've never practiced it before and they've never been intentional about attaining and seeking that self-leadership? What would you tell them?
So I tell them to start in the grocery store, right? And to stop, make your list, obviously, right? But then when you go to look at something that you were planning on buying, truly ask yourself if you really want that thing. And if your inner self, even if you have to wait 5 minutes and you look goofy standing there in the grocery aisle waiting for your inner self to respond, I don't care. Like, this is all part of self-ownership, right? Like, you're doing a thing for yourself. So stop and wait for that true reaction to come through, and then follow through with that. Like, start with the little things, like at the grocery store, or deciding whether or not you're going to go to Wendy's or you're going to cook at home. Right? Finding those little moments in the day-to-day moments and building a practice with that. And then you can start getting a little bit deeper into other things.
That's a great way to start. So the self-ownership, the self-leadership. So next in your pillars, so you've described self-awareness. That seems like a loaded topic to jump into. Where do you start with self-awareness?
Self-awareness is just starting to be aware with your body mechanics, right? Like, do you slouch when you're doing this, when you're working on the computer versus holding yourself up? Are you aware that you're always late, that you're always 15 minutes late, and that your friends have to tell you an earlier time just to get you there on time, right? Are you, like, what are you aware of that you do? Are you aware that you chew with your mouth open? Are you, right? Like, becoming aware of your mannerisms and your habits. Are you aware of all those things? And then you can start broadening your perspective.
So I say earlier, you talked about how you can't talk about self-ownership without some of the other skills. So I'm sensing that this is where self-awareness does tie into self-ownership, and
right,
how the two go hand in hand.
Right. So if you start becoming aware that you're one of those people that's always, let's just use the late person, right? That's always late to a gathering. Are you okay with that? Right. And if you're okay with that, then take ownership of it and just be like, yeah, I'm the one that's always late. So I just need to roll all my clocks back 15 minutes in order for me to be there on time. That's taking ownership. That example right there is number one, taking ownership. Number 2, taking leadership by changing all the clocks because you know you're going to be late. And self-awareness.
I love that. So how, it makes me think of the concept of raising the bar on ourselves.
Yeah.
So would you say that someone who struggles with self-awareness, where that they've placed the bar at a certain level, or what would that look like? Where is the bar for them in terms of self-awareness and then self-ownership?
It's different for everybody, right? Some people are totally nose blind and are totally self-aware blind and don't even realize a lot of the things that they do, and they blame everything on everybody else, right? And then there's other people that are completely aware of who they are but don't know how to move forward in changing any of that, even if they want, even if they've gotten through to that step. So I think it's too broad of a spectrum to really kind of identify an answer to that. But I think if, for those that want to, have personal growth, so I think self-awareness is really important.
So I mean, but this is good, because self-awareness for sometimes we can see things in others that maybe they don't see. And then to some extent, is that a measure of seeing something in us that we see in the other person? So throwing that concept in here, how much of that is tied into that?
Right. So sometimes we could be seeing a reflection of ourselves in other people, right? Especially our pets. Our pets are a reflection of us.
Oh boy.
Right?
Ooh, then
because they sense our energy, they sense our emotions way before we do. So if they're misbehaving, or if they're like super cuddly and like can't get off of you, like maybe you need to do an inner check, a little self check, and figure out what's going on with. Maybe you just had a rough day and they're feeling it, and so they want to give you some love, and that's great. So you have to figure out like where that bar is for you. But sometimes we might need to do an inner check and be like, okay, what's going, like they've been acting out for a week. Maybe I need to figure out what's going on with me, because they're probably feeding off of me.
Maybe like a self check-in type of approach. Okay.
Yeah.
So self-ownership, self-leadership, self-awareness, which I would gauge that one to be a big one. Then the next one that you've identified in your pillars is the effective communication. That's another big one. You're hitting some big points here.
Yes, right. So a lot of people just speak to speak, or they're silent because they're waiting to speak and they're thinking of what they want to say next. I know some people in my world, they talk a lot, but their communication is not effective. Right? It's not about the quantity of words that you're using. It's about the quality of words. It's about sticking true to your communication. Like, what do you want to say? But how do you want to say it? And just like the TV show or being up on stage or anything else, it's also about speaking to your audience. Maybe you need to tailor what you want to say using the vocabulary of the person that you're speaking to.
So that's huge, because it sounds like it goes back to societal habits that we have. So the things that we're taught. So earlier, obviously, we're talking about the things that we learn, the type of behaviors that we've learned along the way. And effective communication could very well be what we heard in the house, how everyone spoke, how they conveyed a message. And so I can see how that circles back around. So how do you tackle effective communication if someone who you're working with just hasn't gotten the grasp of that yet?
I will actually attempt to say what I'm trying to say 5 or 6 different ways. if they're not getting it. I will re-verbalize it. I will restructure the sentence. I will use different vocabulary in order to try and figure out how it works best for them. And like once I learn, like my brain just kind of clicks and be like, okay, this is what works for them. And then I can move forward in that direction.
You know, what I love is just the intentionality of having a message land. And then it integrates back to what you were covering before, leadership, and about the, you know, taking ownership in how all of this comes together. You know, the stepping forward and putting that effort into that message. How, at what point do you know when somebody just really gets it and that they implement this into their, into just how they're moving, how they're grooving, and
you
communicating.
You can see it on their face
and getting that and getting that connection.
You can see it on their face.
Yeah.
And you can feel it in their energy. It's palpable. Their energy changes. And their facial expressions change. They feel more connected with themselves. They feel more peaceful, more grounded, more connected is the best word. And when they feel that way, you can see it, like you can see some of the wrinkles go away on their face, right? Like their posture is more relaxed. Their energy is more, that they're putting off, is more relaxed. So yeah, it's just, you can see it.
It's got to be a cool feeling for you when you're working with someone and they have that breakthrough moment. Would you say that it was a breakthrough, or is it just kind of like an emergence of in getting to that better level of where they're trying to attain?
I call them aha moments. Right? So I don't think we're always striving to be the best version of ourselves, right? And life is always changing and throwing us different things. So I think we're always trying to navigate life, right? So I think as long as you're always having like aha moments and you're just like, oh, okay, now I get that. Okay, so now I know how to move forward with that. Or if somebody gives you a golden nugget of information and you have like that aha, then I think that's the key, right? Like you're paying attention, you're watching the signs, you're being aware, and following through. That, for me, that's it. It's the aha moments.
Aha. And now we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this.
Life is so fragile, and we're constantly reminded just how fragile life can be, especially when we or a loved one is told we have cancer. Cancer survivor myself, I can tell you, we still feel very alone in this journey.
There's a study that's been showing that patients who are socially isolated have a worse prognosis, have a worse outcome than patients who are socially interconnected.
Buddies for Life is a non-profit cancer support group for those whose life has been impacted by cancer. Humor, hope, heart, and hugs.
Humor, hope, heart, hugs, and a whole lot of love.
Share this with your friends and family and support this community in every way you can. No one should face cancer alone.
I am a chemo buddy for life.
We are a Buddies Network.
No one does cancer alone.
Be a buddy.
And we are all here for you as a community of love.
We are chemo buddies for life.
And if you've heard 3 words, you have cancer, for yourself or someone else, you belong with us at Chemo Buddies for Life.
Healing through connections.
We're back here on the Health Revolution talking to spiritual health expert Wendy Watson. We've been going through her 5-step programs, her pillars of the step-by-step. We talked about the self-ownership, the self-leadership, self-awareness, effective communication. There's one last piece to this puzzle, and it's trailblazing skills. Seems like it ties everything together. And I got to ask you to say more about that, Wendy. Say more.
Yes. So, a lot of people just think when they hear the word trailblazer, right, they're thinking of Elon Musk or Tesla or Oprah, right? Somebody big that's like, done their thing. But I think that we all have trailblazing skills because we all have our own path that we are meant to burn, that we are meant to pave. And so I really want to tune people into those skill sets within themselves so that they can take the ownership of their of the path that they're meant to do, right? Like whether it's me and my spiritual health, or it's you and your fitness and your TV and all these amazing things that you have going on, right? Everybody has those skills, but we all have different ways that we use them based off our environment, based off our occupation, based off the people that are around us. And so I really want people to hone in on those skills that they have.
Do you find that people struggle with what they would qualify as a trailblazing skill? Do you feel like it's just okay?
Yeah, because most people don't see themselves as the Wright brothers that's going to, invent an airplane. We all have those abilities. We all have those skills. Now, our skills may not lead to the first airplane ever built, but that doesn't mean what we're going to create is any less spectacular or any less meaningful, because that, whatever it is that we're meant to do, could have a huge impact on somebody, and it could change their entire world, right? So you don't know if you can hone in on your abilities. You have no idea how big of an impact that you can make on other people and on the community. And that's where it comes in for me.
So that tells me that seems to align with really chasing your dreams, or having that dream, or encouraging people to think about remembering the dream that they had and acting on it. How do you encourage somebody? What are some of your tactics that you like to utilize to help someone really tap into their dreams, and then perhaps maybe cultivate those trailblazing skills?
So one of the tools that I love to use is my 70-20 tool, 70-20-10 rule, which is what my book is about. And it's really about utilizing the 70-20-10 percentages on how you're communicating, how your life is fitting together as a whole, how you're communicating, how, I use it in nutrition, I use it in business, right? So really honing in on how harmonized your communication or how fluently your life is working. Like if you have a lot of chaos around you, you're not going to have the space, the mental or energetic space to feel inspired and creative in order to look for your path, in order to be inspired by your dreams, in order to do all the things, because you're going to be so focused on the chaos. So how do we, right? So if your life is 70% chaos, you're not going to be able to move in on your dreams. So how do we reduce the percentage of chaos so that you can put the 70% of energy into your dreams, or into whatever it is that you choose that you want to put that energy into?
I love that. I want to see if we can go ahead and put a picture of your, if we can put your book on that screen, we'll see if we can go ahead and get that up. We're going to work on that here. It's called, your book is called Verbal Turbulence. And I know we're working on that right now. And it's the 70-20, you said 70-20-10?
70-20-10 rule. So the book just went live on Kindle this week, 2 days ago. So I'm super excited. I know I've already got sales pouring in, so it's amazing. But I think there's 16 different ways that I demonstrate the 70-20-10 rule, and most of it is through communication, but there's also ways of viewing it in business. And I really think it's a fantastic tool for people to use.
How long was this a book that was coming to fruition for quite some time, or was it something that was just birthed out of a need to really address some of these tactics to pave the way for the skills and to really grow from where we are today?
So it's interesting. None of the above.
Okay. Thanks for your honesty.
I never saw myself as an author, but my grandma on her deathbed back in October, as she was transitioning in between, the earth world and whatever's on the other side, I was sitting next to her, and with her eyes closed, she turned her head and looked right at me and said, "You need to write that book." And I was like, okay, sure. I have no idea what you're talking about, but apparently I need to write a book. And then in January, I met Beatrice Bruno, the drill sergeant of life, at a networking event. And we had lunch a couple days later. And she's like, "There's 3 books you need to write. 1, 2, 3. And so I tuned into my inner relationships, and I asked myself to dream about it and be like, okay, which book do I need to write first? And this is the one that came up, and I'm like, okay, then just feed me the information. I started writing in January. I finished my book at the end of May. It only took me 4 or 5 months to write the book.
Wow. So you clearly a lot of value that you're adding to that. So trying to see if we can bring that I'm hoping that we can bring the picture up. Sometimes we, have little glitches here and there.
There it is.
There. Verbal Turbulence. And it is available. Say where it's all available at?
Right now it's just available on Kindle. The paperback version, and I'm so happy to announce this, will be published on August 2nd, which is my grandmother's birthday.
Oh.
So I just feel like that's super fitting. So yeah, I should have the proof this weekend, and it'll be published on August 2nd.
That's fantastic. I'm excited. I can't wait to get my hands on the book and just tap into that knowledge that you're sharing. You talked about, we talked about, and I highlighted at the very beginning that you're working on developing workshops in the very near future. What can you say about that?
Yeah, so I'm trying to develop, or I'm in the midst of developing a 5-workshop mastermind class. And you can either take them individually or you can take them as a whole as a mastermind. One is going to be on mindset. One is on emotions. One is on spirituality. One is on finances.
So all those 3?
I'm trying to think of, I should start counting. I'm trying to think of what the other, I'm sure it'll come to me. But different aspects of life. And each workshop is a 4-week workshop. So I didn't want to put too much of a major commitment on people. 4 weeks is usually about enough, as much as they can handle. And it'll be really interesting. So I'm collaborating with one person on the finance, right? I'm bringing in a finance expert to host 2 of those weeks. And then the other 2, I'm going to talk about how our emotions and our rearings and the beliefs that we have have an effect on our finances.
Wow. So this is developing. Will this come to fruition at this calendar year?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, this calendar year.
All right.
That's all I'm going to say right now because I haven't quite tied everything together yet.
No pressure, no pressure. But obviously, coming from a space where there's a lot of intentionality and helping people to reach that new level of greatness and to serve. I think that speaks a lot of volumes. Yeah. So with your book, it's something that, so you said that there's 3 books that you were told before. So you have, this is the first, so are there 2 more coming in the works?
Oh my gosh. So Tuesday this got published on Kindle, and luckily like my parents were here, so we got to share in the joy, and I could not sleep most of the night. And my dad's like, yeah, you had to be so excited. I'm like, no, my brain was already working on the next book. Which is going to be like a 3-part series. And then I have another one. My family has to help me with the 3rd one. I'll share a little bit of a tidbit. It's called Brother George, and it's going to be more of a kid's book.
Okay. Yes.
That's imaginary amazing sibling that takes fault for everything.
I love that. That's incredible. We're going to take a quick break and we will return right after this.
Hi, I'm Julie Jones Hamilton, and my partner, Lynn Kitchen, and I co-host World's Greatest Motivators every Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific on the Achieve channel. Come join us and the best thought leaders in the planet today, right here at E360 TV.
We've been talking to Wendy Watson, spiritual health expert here on the Health Revolution, and I know we're wrapping things up, but Wendy, I do want to say that it's been incredible to talk to you, and your message of overcoming trauma and taking those self-related awareness, ownership, leadership, communication, trailblazing skills, and the fact that you have a new book. I think this speaks volumes. No pun intended. But I'm excited. I'm excited for what's to come. Anything else that you want to share? Where can people find you if they're looking for you?
So all of my social media links and my website are TBR Spiritual Health. All right, so .com for the website. I'm on the 5 major social media links, so Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. I'm sure there's another one in there somewhere.
Maybe LinkedIn, maybe something like that.
Yeah, there you go, LinkedIn. I couldn't remember which one I said. Yeah, so they can, and they can watch videos. They can book a free 30-minute discovery call with me. If they're interested, with no obligation, no credit card needed, none of that kind of stuff. It's just a free 30-minute discovery call if you want to chat with me and see how I can help you, if you want to share a little bit of your story and see how we can work together on achieving what you want to achieve.
So that's T as in Tom, B as in boy, R, spiritualhealth.com. Yes.
As in to be revealed.
As in to be revealed. That's what it stands for. Wendy, it's been incredible having you, and of course everyone watching live and then on demand replay. It's been an incredible experience having you join us today. So my name is Adriana Morrison. I'm your host of the Health Revolution, and we appreciate you tuning in. And until next time, take care.
Thank you.